consequences, which could be things like feeling depressed, feeling isolated, feeling anxious, feeling insecure, you know, the whole imposter syndrome. I done left my environment where everybody looks like me, and now I'm in this new environment where folks don't look like me. Do I fit in here? Do I belong here? That results in a lot of sort of internal conflicts. And so there's internal conflicts as well as some external stuff. How do I negotiate getting promotions? How do I be assertive and aggressive without being called the B word? Not being seen as rude or angry or disrespectful or rude. And so there becomes a lot of challenges to navigating both identities. And so what the women did was they generated some strategies that allowed them to either maintain relationships with their family or to cut them off completely. And so some of those things are like isolating the worlds, keeping them very separate, not having joint parties, not talking to folks about what they're doing in different environments, the code switching. A part of it is about forgiving, sort of acknowledging the disparities and forgiving your parents for not giving you, or not forgiving your community for not providing what it couldn't have provided. This sort of trying to negotiate the relationship. So maybe you say, this is so funny that this comes, my younger brother, I love him to death. He called me and he's like, what are we doing this weekend? I was like, I'm going to run a 5K. He's like, what? Why would you do that? First off, in the black community, we don't run unless somebody's chasing us. That's why we do that, right? So why am I running the 5K? 1. 2, I said, you know, I'd love for you to come and cheer me on. After the race, we'll go get some breakfast. So I took him and his fiance and their child to a local restaurant in my college town. I mean, it was kind of fancy. He had a little linen tablecloth, the orange juice maker from Fresh Orange Juice. He was like, whoa, you ballin'? This how you live? Like, this what you do? And so 2 weeks later, I get a call. Can I borrow $200? Oh. I said, oh, man, now I got to have a hard conversation of, this is where the negotiating the relationships, this is the boundary setting. So if I give you $200 today, is it going to be $250 next time, $400 next time? Do I want to set this principle of giving? But then that expectation comes up of my whole purpose of getting the degree was so that I could help them out, so why would I be stingy or selfish and not give? So that sort of conflict, that sort of duality, how do I set a boundary for myself? Because I know how he spends. Oh, I know he loves video games. I know he loves Jordans. And so you don't really need the money. You just want to spend all your money and then ask for a handout. That's not really okay. So what a lot of women talked about was negotiating these relationships, maybe even writing a contract. I will give you this amount of money. You will pay me back on this day. Maybe even one woman said, every paycheck, I set aside a little bit of money in a pool so that when my family calls, I'm always pulling from that pot. And when that pot's done, I'm done offering. I'm done saying yes to those requests. But having to negotiate that and be very explicit about that, that's a different kind of relationship than we've had. A lot of us who come from more collective environments where you pool your money together for resources, you do holidays jointly, you do grocery shopping jointly. Many of us are raised in the same building, if not the same household, with many generations and cousins and all that whatnot. So, sort of saying no and setting this boundary and getting more formal with a contract becomes a real unique challenge where you have to get creative about how do I maintain these relationships without feeling too drained. Using social support was a really big one. They talked about, I go to school, I go to work, and I develop a social network of people who can get it, who are also from a different environment, who are also struggling to adjust or adjusting really well and want to teach me something. But without that social support, there can be a lot of isolation and a lot of loneliness. And a lot of folks won't know that we got that going on because we kind of can be superwomen sometimes. Those are some of the key parts. There is spirituality is always a big one that we use, staying very prayerful, very hopeful. Some people just avoid relationships with their family altogether because it just gets too complicated to navigate.
It's a lot of conflict.
It's a lot of conflict.
I've experienced it, you know, and I don't look at it as, you know, they think, you know, on some other, you know, island from them. But I try and look at it that I'm afforded the opportunity to think critically about a lot of issues that people who come from backgrounds where they work 2 or 3 jobs or they're attending to, you know, every month growing up, there was small crises. Yeah. You know, paying rent, paying bills, getting the kids what they need, all of those emergencies that come from just living.
Yeah, certainly.
You know, for poor people, they can be crises, whereas for other people, they're just, you know, go with the flow kind of, you know, things. So I try and think of it as I have the opportunity to think more broadly about issues, and then directly, how do they affect me? How do they affect my immediate community? How do they affect the larger community? These are things that a lot of working class people just don't have the opportunity.
No, they're in survival mode
to think about.
Certainly.
And so I try and keep that in mind when going into conversations with them.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of what I want to do is kind of consciousness raising. So when I see those opportunities to kind of get in there and sneak in some of what I've learned, you know, then I do it the best way possible, using the kind of language that they can relate to, rather than using a bunch of textbook stuff. But if they ask me, then I'm always willing to share that with them. And I think that, you know, you have to figure that balance out, and I'm still figuring it out. Because without that balance, it's very difficult. I find myself in a lot of arguments, and there's a lot of strain on my relationships with people I really care about. So in order to maintain those relationships and still feel okay with leaving and pursuing other things for myself, I have to find a way to negotiate where I am with where they are. And I feel like that's my responsibility, because without them, you know, I couldn't do what I'm doing.
That was the whole conclusion of the study, was it's worth the work. Because it's work. It's not this sort of identity, this fluid identity. It's not easy to belong to multiple worlds. And for a lot of us, we belong. It's not just sort of bicultural. It's really multicultural, the different pots we got our hands in. But it gets really tough and real tricky. And we have to get real creative about how am I going to navigate it all. Yeah, but a lot of women said it's worth it. It's totally worth it. To have this relationship with my family, it's worth it. And so I'll keep doing it.
I definitely agree with what she said. It's something that, you know, people just forget about the people in the community. So it is our duty, because someone has to be there. And someone has to do it, right?
Well, and it's us who left. They still where they were.
If no one doesn't do it, then it's just going to stay the same.
Right. And we continue to, you know, I think we open the door to continue to be oppressed in many ways. If we don't go back and we share in that responsibility to take care of one another, then although we move up individually, we really don't. We stay, you know, stagnant in our progress.
But I like the point of there's multiple responsibilities. You have a part, your family has a part, your community has a part, and as students of color, we can't carry all that on us. I gotta get good grades so my mama ain't never gotta work again. I hear this all the time. I want to be able to retire my mama. I don't know what job you pursuing where you think you about to be able to retire your mama. The truth of it is your mama probably gonna have to work for a long time, as will you. Unless you're doing something I don't know about. And if you do, let me know so I can pursue that too. Let's find it. But the truth of it is we have really high expectations for ourselves. There's a lot that we carry in terms of responsibilities. And if we can spread that out and share it, I think we'll all be a little bit better off.
And then pass it down generation to generation.
Heck yeah.
It's better.
It was great talking to you all today. Sorry we went just a 10 over.
Yeah, thank you all again for coming out. I'm sure that Dr. Symonds would be happy to continue these conversations. If you have to go, go ahead and go. But if you want to stick around and talk some more, then you are welcome to. This is the conclusion of this semester's Black Ann, but look forward to next semester topics including looking at issues of mental health, issues of manhood and masculinity, things about being African and not from America, so the rest of the African diaspora. So those are all things that you can look forward to in this series next semester.
Thanks so much, y'all, for your time.
And don't forget to drop off your evaluation forms.